As I lay in bed before the sun rises, but after the birds have begun their morning liturgy, I wonder what happens to us in all our memories, everything we see as encapsulating who we are, our very self. The obvious answer is that they disappear or maybe follow us into the afterlife, though I would like to select the ones that remain. In one sense, we are microcosms of the universe, made up of dreams, aspirations, regrets, and memories. Yes, many memories at my age, more memories than any future goals. Where do they all go? Thoughts of the future certainly disappear. But so much of who we are, who we think we are, has been shaped and molded by the past. As Faulkner wrote, the past is never dead. It's not even past. So much of what I do is predicated on the future. I still read philosophy and theology, mostly out of curiosity, but also, though no longer applicable, to pass the information on to my students. I'm retired now. Has the shelf life of what I learned to share already expired? Knowledge for living's sake is important. However, something in us, in me, wants to pass it on to children, grandchildren, I don't know. Learning is intersubjective. It seems knowledge, or whatever we call it, is meant to be shared. But where and with whom? That's the universe that seems so mysterious and, in some ways, intangible. So where do those acquired lessons and the supposed wisdom that comes from them go? Or do they go? While I don't want to put knowledge in a utilitarian framework, it's hard not to do so, perhaps due to my vocation as an instructor. To quote Faulkner once again, the most important thing is insight, that is, to be curious, to wonder, to mull, and to muse why it is that man does what he does. I'm not sure it's the most important thing, but it's up there. I rise just before sunrise, put on my shoes, strap the harness on our Siberian husky, Breezy, and leave the house. Walking the dog this spring morning in the darkness, the birds performing the soundtrack, I was reminded of being an 11-year-old boy and having a paper route. I remember I was 11 because the age rule was 12, but the district manager must have been tired of waking early to perform the task and hired me anyway. I woke at 4:45 a.m., 7 days a week, stumbled out to the driveway's edge with wire cutters in hand, where a stack of papers tied together by wire sat encased in plastic wrap depending on the weather. The double-sided bag held the papers in front and in back. My head was in the middle with openings on front and back. On Thursdays and Sundays, ad days, they were heavy and irritated my shoulders. Most of the time I would entertain myself by playing songs in my head and adding lyrics to make the song last for as long as I could. Lennon's Instant Karma was a favorite for my early morning variations on a theme. At the end of the route, the sun was not quite up, but the sky had grown light. I took off my dew-soaked tennis shoes and left them on the front porch, no tracking on the floor, and returned to bed. That's how these essays began, a way to convey my past and what sense I was able to make out of it. What follows are reflections on the past, on life experiences, on faith, and on death. I'd like to think that, despite different pasts, different personalities, much of what we learn and experience is universal. The following essays mirror my experience and what I think is the human experience. In his poem, The Waste Land, T.S. Eliot wrote, "These fragments I have shored against my ruin." These words close his epic poem, in which he shows the fragmentation of a declining civilization. Each fragment, whether religious, philosophical, or literary, he hoped would be a bulwark against the disorder and chaos he saw around him after World War I. I wrote these memories and reflections as a way of making sense of the world, and more specifically, my life that I hope to see more clearly and pass on to my family and fellow travelers. The following essays are presented in some type of chronological or thematic order, but they can be read randomly. Some of the quotes and events are repeated because of their interconnectedness that I find in life. I hope readers connect to these reflections and sense they have a fellow traveler alongside of them.